Good morning. Hello. This is Dr. Mia Lueth. It is 8:15 a.m. on February 7th, 2026. And this is a public statement that I'm making. And I only really need one of the individuals who see that I've sent it out through YouTube and through X and to certain members of uh, the air quote hockey press and the Winnipeg Jets organization. I I know for a fact that I'm gonna get ignored for various reasons, but in this case, somebody's gonna listen to me, and somebody's gonna give a crap, and some realizations are gonna happen because while you are looking for your purpose on earth, I've been living mine the whole time. Now I am a goalie, right? I do have my rose-colored glasses on. Maybe that doesn't mean what you think it means, but I'll take them off so you can see my face. I'm 53 years old. I found out that I really loved ice hockey way back in the 70s, where when my poppy, who has been long deceased, took me to a Whalers game. And then I also got to see the last two games of the Miracle Season USA in Lake Placid. I was very young, so I didn't really understand the ramifications of that. I have several medical conditions that for sure shorten my life. And there are people who have been in and out of, at the very least, Washington Capitals LLC, namely Ole Kolzig, baby Alex Ovechkin, some of the press along the way, including Mr. Ted Leonsis. You know, I've let my hockey fandom reach out to those people, and I stuck with that team through whatever. You know, there are things that at a certain point in time, because of how well I know this game now, and how well I know the National Hockey League, and how well I understand now, because I'm a student of the game. I'll always be a student of the game. To me, it's a sport, however. I take it seriously like it's a sport, and it is extremely difficult to play. And a lot of people who make the National Hockey League, and in some cases leagues in Europe and the Olympics, and I've said what I needed to say about the Olympics. It is meant for amateurs, and you know, in reference to Mark Scheifele not making the team, I understand. Like it's like Homer, homeboy. Some people are upset because Mark didn't make the Olympic team, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. And if you listen to the statement he made in the press out loud, he said, God has a plan. He did say that. Number one, Mark Scheifele has a full time guaranteed job with the NHL franchise called the Winnipeg Jets, also lovingly referred to as Jets 2.0. Okay? First of all, if you really just take a deep breath and you let go some of the personalness of it and the fact that you're a Manitoba or Winnipeg, you know, um, you have that connection. All right, just let go of that position. If you listen to when they were announcing the names that were going to the Canadian ice hockey, were going to be on Team Canada. And you listen to some of the talk that surrounded it from various different viewpoints. There are a lot of guys. That was, a position that had a lot of contenders. And, it really could be just as simple as, well, the way that Team Canada is going to play, okay, the way that structure is going to happen. At some point, their deadline, December 31st, you have to have the names. And I can imagine it is very difficult for those who have to look at all the Canadians, the male Canadians, and pick and choose. I understand why Connor Bedard didn't make it. He's young, so it's okay, right? And some guys, right, injured. So there are some who are kind of on the wait list. But people need to just. I take it. Some know now that I jump in the chats whenever I can, whenever I can keep my head up, and whenever I'm well enough to talk and these kind of things. And I see, I understand, I get it, but no one needs to feel sorry for Mark Scheifele. Okay, he's got a full-time job. And for those who, say things like, well, they're not improving, they're too old, it's like, have you actually listened to Mark Scheifele speak to the press, interviews, and what have you? Because he's feeling good. And he knows what his game was like 10 years ago. And every indication coming out of him, he's not trying to hide anything from anybody when it comes to that. He's feeling very good about his game, which is good news for the Winnipeg Jets. It's also good news for Mark Scheifele. It's also good news for the guys who play around him. Okay? And, he's going to be okay. And actually, it comes right down to it, that just puts his mind to concentrating on, fully on Jets ice hockey. Now, me, I don't agree with professionals playing in the Olympics. I could understand, there's a basketball situation, and that happened. I could understand for certain reasons, but the hockey, though, is not for the same reasons. And a guy like Mark Scheifele, he's already representing Canada on ice throughout the entire ice hockey season, National Hockey League. That's truth. Okay? So think about all those people who were this close to making the National Hockey League. Think about all those people who, either their parents didn't have money or they didn't have the right kind of technology to, blow their horns and toot there and get the attention of scouts. I mean, essentially, the Olympics might actually be discriminating against the poor kids of male hockey. And likely you're doing it to the males, right? Probably happening to the females as well. Okay? It's meant for amateurs. The pro sports people should understand that you get the spotlight all the time, but they don't get the spotlight every so often. So I disagree with professional players in the Olympics. And truth be told, the people who, I watch NHL on TNT, and like I've been actively learning and listening and looking all around. I mean, anything and everything I can get my eyes and ears on having to do with the National Hockey League. And of course, there's now affiliated clubs and other things. I'm still learning. I'm still listening. But I speak out sometimes when I know for sure what I'm saying should make sense to the majority of the people who live it, breathe it, do it, love. And I've lived it. The one thing, I live in Maryland. The one thing I could say is that I do remember when I was younger. I, I mean, my parents, we didn't have, any kind of sports package. There was hardly anything, any hockey on. I understand, right? But sometimes at night, I could turn on my AM transistor radio, yeah, the little compact one with the little antenna. And depending on where I went in my house, I could pick up games being broadcast over the radio from Canada and other places because AM wavelengths are long range, and depending on the weather, would be how clear it is. And I remember Comcast Sportsnet. I remember learning about TSN when that became. I've been around through the. Does anybody remember Versus? Some are old enough to remember Versus. It used to be ESPN, and then it went to NBC, and now it's the rights to the broadcast and all these things. And I when I could, I would get the only reason I had digital cable was to get the NHL Center Ice so that I could watch all the divisions and both conferences. And I've read books from, you know, Gordie Howe, Wayne Gretzky. I've read things of, contributions from in books, guys like Marty Brodeur and all sorts of other people. I'm constantly, you know, it's like I've never needed, it's not since I was very young, needed to know what my purpose is. I'm not in any kind of, situation where, I don't have that. And I'm grateful because by the time I was 10 years old, I knew I'm here because of and for the ice hockey planet Earth. And I've listened to player after player after player from all different parts of the world, from both of the conferences, from all of the divisions. I can tell you, I vaguely remember the Patrick division because the Caps were in the Patrick division. But yeah, I have to look up. Yeah, you get older sometimes, you forget things. But and then the southeast, and you hear about the travel in the west. There's all sorts of things. I can say that I've recently heard, through the Winnipeg Jets sort of media and conversations, that some of the Canadian goalies, aren't really as well known in the U.S. and aren't talked about. And well, I can tell you that me coming up, I'm not sure that's entirely correct because I heard about Cares. I heard about goalies that only played on Canadian teams. Sometimes, as the 2000s started rolling, it was more and more trading. There was more and more movement. Teams did not stay together. That's why dynasty teams just really aren't possible anymore, which is actually good news for parity and things like that. I mean, the goal was to have equalizers so that every team in the National Hockey League had a chance. But I can say to Canadians and anyone who was thinking that, I mean, I came up listening to US based, conversations and press and everything else. And, I mean, I'm a goalie. Goalies are kindred spirit. So I might have been a little more invested in learning about all the goalies in the league. But there are plenty of people I can say in the last, 20 years who have mentioned goalies, from Canada, this one and that one. So I don't think that they're getting overlooked as much as some might think. Okay. And the Canadian press works just a little different from the US press, but not much anymore. So, there is that. I can say that, and I know it was a female and who mentioned that. And I'm going to say, well, no, I mean, the goalies are talked about. It's not a Canadian goalie thing. It's just a goalie thing. Because I wrote a post a while ago, a long time ago, actually, like 2009 or something, in Staying from the Crease, which is, my blog, public diary, that kind of thing, which I've had for a very long time. That, you know, I, I think that people may not have, a good sense of the position of goaltending in the National Hockey League in general. And I know guys like Kevin Weeks, obviously Darren Panger, and me, I'm extra. I will. Yep, like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna talk up Panger because he's also a shorter goalie. I'm 5'4", and I bet you, if we were to line up all the goalies on planet Earth, adult, full size, okay, I would be either the shortest or closest to the shortest goalie on planet Earth. But I was very successful as a goalie. So, sometimes depending on your skills, the one thing that I have naturally born, native, germane to me, is a very good sense of one fractals, but yes, but in a four-dimensional that includes time. We're not just 3D because that's just then still. Yes, moving and at a certain pace, spatial reasoning skills, so angles, those kind of things. I just picked up on really quickly. So to me, not being taller was not an issue in whatever net I was defending as I was growing up because I would know. Like I very quickly. I learned how to read. Okay, this one's going to go right. And so, a taller goalie might only step a rear or, but me, it's just like I got to know when to do it. Okay. So I'm going to take 2 steps, but the taller goalie probably only take 1. I'm going to go out and challenge because, right, like I know I can work that entire box, however big it is. And if I can get there faster, they are going to have to take a crap shot. Okay, that's if my, if my team, if the defenders on my team are, not quite going to make it. And I had short but powerful legs, which is something else that, a smaller guy, whatever, but he's a Hall of Famer coming up. Yeah, Marty St. Louis. Yeah, a little because I could like quick just shoot out real quick, and I mean I'm at business, so if they're gonna aim in my face, I don't care if they're gonna aim. I'm big, right? Like I used to be a little crazy, but sometimes you take them off guard. Blah! It's true. Okay, so there have been goalies all over the planet who aren't, above 6 foot or whatever. And to anyone who has a kid who just swears they're a goalie or is playing in a net, somewhere, whether it's recreational, whether it's college, no matter what level, pro, paid, unpaid, and you know that they just love it and it just makes them and they just want to do it. And kids like that, for parents, uh like if your kid, if you don't have to wake your kid up in the morning to go to like practice, or your kid's like standing there with the gear and the whatever, like 15 minutes, like, come on, let's go, come on, wake up, let's go, right, you understand? Like, you just start to tell. And if it's in them, it's just going to come shining out so ridiculously that you just can't miss it. So for goalies who are not as big and tall or whatever, if you're feeling it and and you can sense your angles and you can read things, do not let anyone talk you out of continuing to play that position. Don't. If you know anyone who sees this, who's run across somebody who gets discouraged, or or just like, oh, it's not fair, right? Just show them this. And I mention Darren Pang a lot because he also got into the NHL undrafted. Okay, so sometimes you can still get in. Okay, so the female pro is still growing and moving and things like that. But the good thing for female pro ice hockey is that if you talk to the fellows, they'll tell you what not to do because, like, okay, well, we made these mistakes. You understand? Like be cool with the fellas, ladies, okay? Because the pro league has been around for a long time, and if you talk to the fellows involved with it, they can, like, they can tell you, all right, well, here's where we really screwed up. You can avoid that, and so on and so forth. Okay, like, it's all hockey, and the females do help grow the game. So speaking of growing the game, all right, I'm just gonna say, I tout the virtues of Panger, and plus he's also really good at explaining things, and he's fun, and you know what I'm saying. I'm glad that he's still talking about hockey, and he's fun, and he's still representing goalie kind, and he's representing guys who got into the National Hockey League undrafted, just Marty Saint and others. But what I'm telling scouts and people and everybody is, just because in the National Hockey League or in the AHL someone is under 6 foot, okay, don't just automatically look at that sheet of paper and ignore that goalie. Because I'm not, I mean, I know who was it, Theodore. I think Marty Brodeurs under. They're guys who won Vesnas and have been very successful in the National Hockey League under 6 foot. Okay, don't throw away the opportunity. Anyone scouting or any team, or don't try to discourage. Okay, like, just because they're not over 6 foot does not mean that they aren't, a champion goalie, especially if they love it. So along the way, if you really look over the last 30 years in the National Hockey League, I've heard these. It comes in cycles. Oh, they're going toward taller goalies. Yes, okay, maybe one club at this point in time thinking, okay, we got it. But that is not the case to the entirety of the whole. These things pop up as new people start learning about the National Hockey League, and as people get older and they want to be involved in the conversations and this kind of thing. Okay, but if you really look, some franchises maybe aren't just Oh, they're looking on paper, they hear, oh, well, he's only, 5'10", so we're not going to consider him for that's you're doing yourself a disservice. It just you understand it, and the goalies who are little, but who cares? Okay, just keep playing, keep loving the game. Uh, so I'm saying some things, and I'm mentioning them because I've unfortunately my health is not as right stable, and I've known. I've been dealing with serious illness my whole life, and I worked disabled. I'm also you know autistic. I'm not an Aspie. I didn't go around telling people when I was younger or when I was growing up because unfortunately, back when my parents and I'm going to say I was adopted, so yeah, I'm 53, but I was not raised by baby boomers. I mean, they're called boomers here in the U.S. and the other countries. I was raised by the generation ahead, so that makes me a little different. I'm, you know, quirky, weird, is known as a goalie. You understand? And so, right, I don't care if you think I'm weird. It makes no difference. I mean, if I were, sitting in like, you know, if I were sitting at the goalie table and there's, player tables over here, right? Like, yeah, all the goalies were sitting together, but all of us, the goalies, like, it depends on the perspective. You understand? Like, weird. Like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, goalies, what are they doing? That's weird, man. Look, check this out. Look what that one just did. Okay, and like to us, the players are a little weird. I belong at the goalie table, and we might not. We are always in the minority. So y'all want to talk about minorities, and you're this and you're that. I'm like, well, on planet Earth, the population of planet Earth, goaltenders are always in the minority. So when you run across a goalie who's starting to get discouraged, I mean, don't lie, don't make up shit, don't give them cliches, but introduce them to goalies that you know. And one of them, right? I mean, that would be Darren Pang because, I mean, yes, he's definitely under 6 foot, and he did make the league though. He did because he was undrafted, and there are others around the world. I couldn't really continue on with it, but I mean, not only injuries, but my family. Right, my parents were older, and I wanted to spend as much time with them as I could. And when I realized like how sick they were, there were some things just all right. Well, I have to put this stuff aside, and injuries, right, that kind of thing. But I do know about injuries that ice hockey players can get. Yes, I've had high ankle sprains on both ankles, and one of my ankles, feet, and leg have been just yes. I mean, it was sprain, bruise, this, that, the other kind of thing. But I do have one where my left ankle, I within 5 years, I got two really bad high ankle sprains, and even though I did some of the PT and I take care of it, I still like yes, I do not have full range of motion. That's gone. That would just it's not coming back. High ankle sprains and torn ligaments. If people tell you, don't. I've had people tell me, and it's wrong thinking. Okay, if you break your ankle or break your foot, okay. I mean, if something's going to happen, and right, It's better to break it than sprain it or tear it, because breaks heal faster. And once you get it all, I mean, they hurt like hell at first, but once you get it all settled in you, right, you're in casting room. It's, it's not as uncomfortable. But like high ankle sprains and torn ligaments, those things can be tender and hurt for like months. Okay. I and I don't want to give people who are newer to the NHL, no matter what age, or the AHL, or pro hockey in general. But I am going to say is some of you really should be listening to me and not disrespecting this particular hockey elder, because I've been doing all of it since I was 8 years old. And I don't get paid. I mean, I knew at one point that the Washington Capitals were going to win a Stanley Cup. I knew at one point, that once certain things were, I was there. I was very sick. And yes, so was my mother. And was dealing, my boyfriend had some serious problems with addiction. So there was a lot going on in my life. And I wasn't really sure. So I figured, while I have the money, I decided to get a season seat behind home goalie, which at the time was Brent Johnson and Ole Colsey. And I tried to get first row, but they didn't do, one. But I got fifth row. So it was close enough, you know what I'm saying? Close enough to the ice. And I was there, the minute that the new, I think they're called Edge Reebok. I'm not sure, but the new logo that they, I think still have RBK Edge, whatever they were, right? Jerseys came out. I got one. Of course, it said Colsey because I'm a supporter. I'm an encourager. Please. I mean, I don't like to see them discouraged, because it's just the nature sometimes of certain games and certain teams where even your best efforts just aren't. Yeah, and in that position, you can understand that there's a lot of doubting and second guessing and could I had that? Could I? I mean, woulda, coulda, shoulda. The younger goalies who really do want to just keep going and be successful, no matter what level, especially if you aim in pro. Understand, start as soon as you're a goalie, looking at ways to be mentally tough. Build those goalie walls, the invisible goalie walls. Okay, because you start getting into the pro league, and everybody and their brother and sister, even if they're not even fans of the sport, are going to try and say, "Oh well, you should have had that one," and oh, that one was, and he wasn't in the right thing, and blah 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 blah. Learn to ignore it. Learn to not seek out the public opinion. Learn to talk out the feelings you're having. Learn to understand that even if it's you that's having a bad game here and there, you are on a team. And sometimes someone else on your team is just having one of those days where just can't seem to get it together, or the other teams just knows how to, shut them down, or both, whatever. Mentors of goalies themselves, coaches, all those kind of things, and people, friends of goalies, get to know yourself and how you react to things really well as soon as you can. But, I realized that I was on a varsity outdoor winter soccer team in high school, which was very, very annoying as a goalie because, like, you can be perfectly set and you could see that shot and you could see the angle and you knew that that ball was going to be on this half and it's going to be right a little higher, so you wait to jump, except the freaking wind decided to change directions, and suddenly it's going, well, over there. Yeah, you got to be like so on point, it's crazy. Which was another reason that I played out further a little bit, because if it's gonna, right, because sometimes the wind would go against the ball and it would be my favorite, but sometimes it would be like I'm seeing it. If the wind was not blowing, that shot would go to this corner and I would just, right, but it's coming to me and all of a sudden it's arcing. I'm like, where are you going? Where are you going? Extra unpredictable facts, which were challenging, yes. Aside from being frozen, and when you land on the ground, it's hard and frozen, and it gets slippery because it. Right. Like, anyway, I don't care. I still loved it, but you know, my point was that I appreciate the ice hockey goalies who you know from the National Hockey League and from other places who talk about the position. Um, when the NHL Network came out, on the fly, there's Kevin Weeksy. There's Weeksy. I'm like, tell him what it's like, Weeksy. All right, and same thing with Panger and some others. You understand? So I'm glad that there are some actual, former pro goalies who are in the press and doing game calls, and they can give you perspective. You understand? Uh, you know, but if you really love it, and it's just something that you wake up just wanting to do, and always want to be different some kind of net, you always want to be that. Don't ever give up. Go talk to other goalies and go, like, understand it might be you that had the bad game, but you're on a team, man. Ladies, bros, whatever. So, sometimes your team can get an extra couple goals or can understand, like, okay, this is happening and so and so. And that's what I'm saying specifically. I don't care what anyone else says, to be honest. Is like the Winnipeg Jets is like, I don't really care. I'm going to be annoyingly optimistic because, there is talent and there are some things, but they are having to adjust. And no one, when it comes to the Olympics, that's my other point, is this is kind of ridiculous. It comes to player safety. It comes to other kind of things. It's like, Biz Nasty, yes, Paul Bisnet, and he's a former player, but he's also one of the regulars on NHL on TNT, and he's fun in the pit. Yeah, Biz is great in the pit. Yes, that's great. That's good stuff right there. Just recently put a tweet or X post out that said it's silly, ridiculous. I mean, and like the guys who played it and do it should know. He's saying in an Olympic year, at the very least, it'd be like 76 games or something, right? Not 82. There's no time to practice. Injury, I know, I remember hearing when Paul Maurice was still coaching the Jets, I remember hearing him saying that, the players get used to the compressed schedule. And I got to be honest, like, probably not the majority of them. They just hanging on for dear life and just hoping, what I'm saying. There's parts of their game, there's parts of their social life, there's things that, right. I don't think they actually do to that extent. And so nobody can tell me that the Olympics don't negatively affect the National Hockey League in a variety of ways. And these guys, like Mark Scheifele and others, should just be concentrating on being National Hockey League players, because there's amateurs everywhere who should, right, share the spotlight. That's like two people, three, four, five, six. It doubles the amount of people who are representing Canada or the U.S. or whoever. I know some may not be able to, but listen, you understand, the Jamaican bobsled team. If you can't field enough on an Olympic roster, without using pros, just like, okay, well, skip the next one and start finding all the weirdos that love ice hockey. You know, I mean, it just, like, Crosby, all these guys from Canada, and you guys already represent your country, just day in, day out, season in and season out. All the countries in the National Hockey League and players, you should understand it. Also, like, that way, you don't have to worry about injuries. We don't have to worry about, this like weird break that is very uncommon because it only happens every so often. And, no hurt for none of that shit. And you are encouraging your fellow country people to, look around and work on putting the best amateur hockey they can put on ice. And they don't get paid. You understand? So, I just, this is my feeling, and somebody should really just not ignore me at this point, because I'm pretty sure that, my medical conditions are not really, I doubt I'm long for this world at this point. Okay. And, so these things need to be heard. And I don't care if I don't have a penis. I know enough. I've listened enough. And people should take the time to finish out the rest of this. I appreciate it. So my last thought here that I'm going to put is, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Wayne Gretzky. I don't care if you're, Shovel Day Off. I don't care if you're Steve Eiserman. I don't care you're Yager. I don't care you're, someone, who plays, hockey in the rec level. I don't care. I don't even care if you're the commissioner. Okay? I don't care what you think you know. It is absolutely not okay. And what I'm saying to the members of the Winnipeg Jets press, who focus on them, is it's not really okay to encourage or talk about certain things with some of these fans and chatters who are insinuating, and some of them actually do mean. And if it's any one of you, you need to hear me. Okay? I don't care if it's happened in the past. I mean, investigation can happen. But I'm wondering what these people who are talking about Jets hockey and all these things, why do you think that Winnipeg is so special above all the other leagues, that it's okay to try to, maneuver, crap in order to come in last in order to get top 3 pick. Listen to me carefully. If you think that it is okay to do, and this is a good strategy, and I know Tacona Pauly, I know fellow goalie, listen, I've heard that argument. Oh, but it's best for the future of the team. And I'm like, excuse me. You guys want to get to know who's playing on the Moose? You guys want to look around the AHL? You're looking in the wrong place. We can also trade for yeah. I mean, once the freeze is off, it's an Olympic freeze for trades, right? So once that's off, okay, great. I mean, there's a possibility that maybe once they'll play on one of ours, who's a little older, wants to go play on a team that is going to make the playoffs for sure, and there might be the possibility to trade for a higher round draft pick. But it is absolutely unacceptable. It is wrong thinking, and somebody needs to hear me. Straight out. I'm getting this out before I die, and I shall not be ignored anymore, because this is truth and this is reality. And I think that there's some people having to do with the Winnipeg Jets for sure who need to hear me say this. If you think it's okay to do that, well, then you have to agree that it's okay for all the rest of the teams to do that. So what you're basically saying is, oh, it's good for the future. Okay, so we, lose with a purpose. Excuse me? I mean, oh, you don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Okay, but there's other teams going to end up in them. Okay, so it's only okay for you guys to do it. Every other team has to do it. Yeah, without doing it. Okay, but so you got to assume, okay, it's okay. It's a good strategy to do. Well, then there's coming out of the Olympic break, there should be 16 teams playing the shittiest hockey they can possibly imagine in order to fight for the 32nd spot. I suggest that many of you just stop thinking like that, making comments out loud. And I listen to the CJOB, and listen when I tell you, all of you, the panel, every single one of you. It is not okay to even insinuate it. That is not good for the future of this franchise, and it sure as shit is not good for the future of the National Hockey League. And what about the teams? Listen, and then, a lot of you are like, well, bring up the Moose, bring up the Moose. Well, what if we bring up the Moose, because we cleared out some space in March, some roster, and they're going to play like they mean it. They're going to play like they want to be in the NHL. So basically what you're saying is, except we want you to lose. And that lowers their value and fucks their career. I've had enough. And I'm not entirely unknown in the National Hockey League. And what I want to say about Elliot Friedman, and I'm going to stop. Listen, all right, y'all can talk, and you can say, and you can have your pride and all that other kind of shit. But when I was on check-in, the last check-in that the Winnipeg Jets did with Sarah and Jamie, which I love, and I love their segments. They're great. It's always like an enjoyable part of my hockey day. And then we talk about soup. I know that's fun too. I know I've been going through some soup. I'm sticking with beef barley for a little while, see what happens. All right. But I mentioned, Elliot Freeman's supposed to have all that, right? Well, we're talking about Panarin, and it hadn't been released yet, the news. He says he can't get a good read. Well, I wrote right in check-in. Last I think he's aiming at California. I wanted to write the Kings, but there was a small possibility of the Sharks. I was vibing on the Kings, and guess what? I'm the one who knew. You can call me a joke. I've gotten death threats, which are just plain stupid. But if it really means that much to you, I will not stop you. from trying to unalive me. Player safety. If there's anything that, job that I should be involved in when it comes to just generally the National Hockey League, yeah, it should be player safety. Because what I'm going to say is I understand where some, fans come from when Florida here. I mean, it's a fun rivalry. However, right, I know the last go round and then, one of the Tampa Bay Lightning get the highest fine and all that. I am going to say, well, player safety, you got to consider the fact, okay, I don't care. To me, it's two teams. And you do have to consider that someone did jump off the bench, off the Panthers bench, and go after the guy. You have to consider the entire fullness of the game, not just the highlight and low light. And there have been some times where, okay, well, if, you're going to, get this guy for doing that, but in a similar situation, you're not okay. This needs to be addressed more clearly and properly. If a guy in today's NHL, actually jumps off the bench and then goes after another guy, and it's not because there's 3-on-1 or it's uneven or whatever, okay, they go stick up for their, dude, their friend. You got to look at that as, okay, well, this one needs to get an infraction. You should have stayed on the bench. Okay? But by now, the entire league, and I am addressing now all the officials, the Zebras, it should be the responsibility of any official, any Zebra who's on NHL ice, if you see someone who is behind any net, any player from any team, and they are looking around for the puck, and someone comes behind them and boom, or purposely runs in there without trying to stop or maneuver, you understand? It needs to be called every single time. So it doesn't even matter if it's I'm trying not to get too abrupt and bitchy and shitty about this. But the time has come that gets worked out of this game immediately. Okay? The ledge is no one's friend, especially not at that speed and that pace. Okay? You understand? That's fast, quick. All kinds of stuff can get you. I mean, like their heads could go or their jaws could go right into the ledge. Okay? Your neck and your back are fragile in those situations. What happened with Hayden Fleury and with the, Winnipeg Jets with that was incidental contact, and it was an accident, and we're all clear on that. But it happened in that, little roustabout having to do with the Panthers and the Tampa Bay. And no, you may not turn the blind eye. And all officials, whichever Zebra sees it, you call it. Game in, game out, and game in and game out. And I know it's hard for the skaters. You want to play. Some of it's just trying to go and blah blah blah. But it needs to be brain trained into them to make it stop completely. People could break their necks. That is the most dangerous situation on NHL ice. Do not ignore it anymore. I understand from the player's perspective, you're just going, you didn't mean it. You check them or you push them, and it is not okay. And I don't care who it is. If it's an AHLer who just came up for one game, you still fucking call it if they're the ones. And if it's an issue of who's supposed to do it, whose responsibility, whoever fucking sees it first. So, if a linesman sees it, blow the fucking whistle. Okay? If a ref sees it, blow the fucking whistle. If 3 whistles get blown, amen. It has to be considered at least a minor penalty, and in which case the refs, right. People may not know the linesmen and the refs have different responsibility, but to be honest with you, because sometimes there's block view and obstructed view, it should be responsibility of any of the officials. If you actually watch this whole thing, I really appreciate you. I mean what I say, and no way, no way. If you work for the Winnipeg Jets and you actually are trying to not play, you know, to your best, or you don't want to, if somebody's trying to, like, make this team, not so competitive or whatever the fuck it is, please stop. We get the mushy middle. We get the mushy middle. I mean, Shovel Dayoff did say point blank in his most recent, which people got up in arms. I'm just like, why are you getting up in arms? All right, settle down. Okay, I got all day long kind of patience for hockey clubs, and he did say that. I mean, obviously, the plan is to get some of the Moose up into the Jets, into the NHL, right? Because he said some of them weren't ready last summer, and because they would be, but this shit happens in the National Hockey League. So quit bitching and complaining so much. Okay? So, he discovered he needed to make some moves. And I'm sure that he did the best he could. But they have limitations and constraints too. And, after the Olympic break, there's going to be there might be some room to bring up some guys. I understand from, especially a skater perspective, from the minute how frustrating it is you want to. But, if you really, really feel like that, maybe you just say, okay, well, can I, look around, or can I look around because maybe there's a team, hey, who might be able to get me there and blah, blah, blah. But spots will open. And goalies need a certain amount of time, and then defenders need, right. I mean, it can take a while. At least 3 years, just for a goalie, no matter how good they are, to understand what they need to work toward and build to become a serious NHL long-standing career great goalie. So the goalies who are playing for the Moose is like, look, you know what? Don't be in such a hurry. Don't worry about it. I know the skaters will go up before you and all that kind of stuff, but you know what? I mean, that is one hell of a difficult transition, especially if they're coming from European teams, because they play a different style. There's language barriers. There's, cultural things. Get used to Canada or the U.S. It's highly athletic. And like I've said before, okay, like you can have a guy who is, coming up, and, he's not, but you want that one to take over the spot of your franchise starting goalie. Well, I mean, it could take up to 3 seasons for that goalie to actually play in every single of the 32 NHL buildings, because none of them play 82. There's a lot of talk, and there's a lot of perspectives and situations that just are not addressed. And some of you all sitting around, excuses. I'm like, what do you do for a living? How's your life going? How's your marriage? What was your last performance evaluation? Have you ever been ice skating before? If you have, okay, even if you play ice hockey, I have. I know what it's fucking like. Like the first time that I got all the goalie gear on me and all the goalie skates, which I've been pretty good with it, right? I'm like, I quite honestly, my first thought was stepping out on ice with all that on me is like, geez, how did the Knights of the Round Table fight with all that shit on them? I'm not kidding. And what some goalies need to do, and I'm pretty sure it was Biesca over there, mentioned, well, why does it take so long? All they're doing is standing there. All right, yes. Somebody put him, I'm pretty sure it was Biesca, in goalie gear. If they're gonna complain and they're gonna say, right, because goalie skates aren't like skater skates in the first place. I mean, some of these people are gonna find out, even if you played pro as a skater, and then you put all that shit on you, and you got to use goalie skates. Even very good ice hockey players in the NHL who are goalies would have to admit, oh shit, like just trying to get from first skate on ice over to the net in front of it and stay standing up and turn and maneuver like these guys do. Become very, very clear how athletic, I suggest for ice hockey goalies, in season, or if you're going to do something, like all season to keep yourself moving, two sports or more. Yes, swimming, because you can work on breath work. Okay, it's low impact testing. You're not like messing up your knees. It helps you develop rhythm, and you use, like, if you do all four of the strokes. So some call it curl, call it, yeah, whatever it's called. All four strokes. I mean, you don't have to be like, superstars, but it means you're like, that's a good way to just keep all of your body kind of moving, the blood flowing. And there are, right, if you're doing the breaststroke, helps keep your groins limber, right? All I'm asking is that somebody watches this the entire way through, because I make really good points. And it is not okay in this league, nor should it ever be okay, to put crap ass shitty hockey. I mean, that might actually ruin the careers of some of the, and in the Jets case, news players, AHLs who come up. It's mentally damaging in a lot of ways, and anyone Jets related, you need to hear me and see me. You might be like, saying, "Oh, support this." Oh, I know, and you're not saying it out loud. But you need to stop thinking that way, because it is not good for the future of the Winnipeg Jets, nor is it good for the future of the National Hockey League. And it is wrong. And like I said, if you guys are thinking it, then okay, well then, any team. So then you just have this situation where there's 16 teams playing shit ass, uncompetitive, crappy hockey, discourage players, and then you guys are gonna jump on them even more. Well, I can't take that. Some of you do get like that. I give a shit. I should get paid. I should have been paid a long time ago, because I like this game better. I know this sport better. I understand athletes better than a large portion of the individuals who talk about them. Now, I gotta be honest, there's some that got me beat. I get it. But I just also want to say, look, if you know you're a goalie, just keep being annoying about it. Keep looking for a place to play. If you're, shut out of one league, or just keep going, no matter how tall you are or how short you are. Don't let anyone get in your way. Ask for a way to play. Ask for a scholarship. Ask, maybe your parents will let you go live somewhere. Ask, maybe, somebody can, pay the fee for a goalie camp. But just keep going. I mean, obviously, you got to, family, health, things like that. Sometimes, right? Okay, well, maybe you're good with it. But don't stop because of what size you are. Okay? And people should understand this position a little bit better, especially those who coach it and those who play pro and semi pro. When I played, I started this first story earlier. I'm getting back to it. I would definitely have, because, soccer, right, or football, whichever. And like I learned fast in the middle, like when we did our halftime break. But there, yep, now goalie's yapping. This goalie yapping. I'm like, okay, guys, right, yeah, just like you got to keep it out of the middle. I mean, no, seriously, if there's nothing else that you guys do today, you got to keep it out of the middle because we got three of them. They're gonna run right by you. I can't take the whole net. I can't get the whole net by myself. You guys got to keep it out of the middle. Blah blah blah. But you know what? I'm saying if like one of the fullbacks or something like started at me, I'd be like, all right. So what's the plan? Okay, I won't kick it that way. I'll kick it that way. It would be a sad, horrible mistake if this goes ignored, to be honest with you. Go Jets, go.